historically, the price of XRP ranges for many years before it finally does something substantial and positive. Think about this. For nearly the first 5 years of XRP's existence, mind you, it was created in June of 2012. For nearly the first 5 years of XRP's existence, it was worth about half a penny. That was it. In fact, it got as low as about, I think the low point was somewhere around like 0.2 of a penny, actually. But for the first 5 years, some pretty damn low prices. Felt like it wasn't going to move, I'm sure, for those who were there at the time. But then it finally ran from half a penny in early 2017 to $3.35 roughly in early 2018. Things can change quickly, relatively speaking. I mean, so very slow, and then suddenly, snap of a finger, whole lot happens. And you know what? XRP never returned to that half a penny price. It never did. The price did get as low as 10 cents in March of 2020. That was, for just a brief moment. But just over a year later, though, the price had increased from 10 cents. It had increased 20x to $2. Just 1 year later, it was barely at 10 cents, just for a flash in the pan, very brief moment in time. And then just over a year later, 20-fold increase to $2. And mind you, that's despite an SEC lawsuit that was designed to destroy it. And it still did a 20x. That's incredible. Stayed in the top 10 coins by market cap. And of course, if not for that, it's a virtual certainty that XRP would have entered price discovery. In 2021, I don't really doubt that. If not for the SEC, yes, it would have. So we had to wait extra long. Nothing we can do about it, though. But look, regardless, we entered a new price range, and we would never see 10-cent XRP ever again. And we're never going to. We're never going to see 10-cent XRP ever again. We spent the next several years after that, mostly ranging sideways. And we experienced a bear market bottom of 28 cents before the price of XRP ultimately reached, about $3.65 in July of 2025. I know you guys remember that. That's very recent development. And of course, that's the current all-time high, $3.65. And it was totally vindicating to see that, of course. But look at how long the consolidation was just to get to that point. Think about that. We still haven't seen price discovery for XRP in over 8 years. And I know that's much longer than what all of us wanted and hoped for, but look, that's okay. We can't control when XRP pumps. We can only control whether or not we have exposure to the asset when it finally happens. But I tell you this, we did not wait over 8 freaking years just to see XRP only hit $3.65, barely breaking above the previous all-time high. No. That's not what we came here for. We came here to see face-melting price discovery. And I do believe that's what we will ultimately get. And there's one popular chart analyst who argues that, we didn't wait 8 years just to see XRP peak at, even just $6.50, which we've never seen before. But she's arguing even that's ridiculous. And so the expectation from her is that XRP price is ultimately going much higher. And so there was this post from on-chain analytics firm Santiment, and I thought I'd highlight this too since we're talking about long time periods. Take a look at this. Based on available tracked wallets, the percentage of Bitcoin on exchanges has dropped to its lowest level since November 2017. In the over 8 years since, it's fair to say that quite a bit has changed in both crypto and the world. So what's interesting about that? November 2017, and there were some pullbacks along the way. There were many pullbacks throughout 2017. That was a glorious historic bull run, obviously. But Bitcoin actually, it peaked, and I'm pulling from memory, so this is roughly correct. But it was probably late November, Bitcoin hit $10,000 for the first time in history. And just a few weeks later, it hit its cycle peak, close to twice that price, almost $20,000. And so when Bitcoin's price was around $10,000, people weren't planning on selling. Like the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges was at a historic low. And think about it. And so we've had higher quantities in the years after that, including during the bear market. But what I'm highlighting is that it's actually been falling. We just hit that level, right? Like that's where it is right now. And so that's fascinating to see because history does tend to rhyme with itself. And the same thing is true for XRP. More on that in just a second. I've been talking about it in recent videos, but an article covered that. But first, let's cover this because I agree with the general sentiment here. This is a headline from the Crypto Basic. Imagine XRP waited 8 years just to stop at $6. Raise your targets, top analysts. Casey Trades, a widely followed XRP technical analyst, is urging investors to rethink their expectations for the asset's long-term price ceiling. She argues that the market may be underestimating XRP's potential after nearly a decade of development. Casey made the remarks during a recent podcast appearance alongside XRP commentator Tara. The discussion centered on long-term price expectations and potential buying opportunities. So let me just pause here to first say that as far as the expectations here, totally reasonable. Because historically, you have two major like true bursts in terms of XRP price. You have a first leg up. We got that last cycle and the cycle before that. Then there's a gap in time, and then you get a second one. So if this is truly an extended cycle and we just haven't had the second one yet, just let me note that the second leg up historically is much more substantial than the first one, which is why I say that the fact that she's citing XRP, being a disappointment, basically. I mean, she didn't say disappointment, but just more than what she said in a second. I'm going to highlight it. But the idea that we're not here for $6, $6.50 XRP, yeah, I think that there are a lot of people that would find that disappointing. And even I have lower targets, I think, than most people just because I've been holding so long and my accumulation point is much lower. My average buy price for XRP is 25 cents. So I bought some lower. I bought a fair bit higher. Came out to about 25 cents. Even I would be a little bit disappointed with $6.50 because that would mean that I haven't sold most of my XRP because I intend to sell mostly from the $5 to $8 range, assuming we're presented with those prices. And I admit, I don't know where the price of XRP is going. I could be wrong and it goes to zero. I acknowledge that. But I have high conviction for a reason. But I would prefer to sell most of it closer to the $7 range, maybe even getting closer to $8. I would strongly prefer that. So I would be a bit disappointed if we peaked around $6.50 because that would mean that I sold some of my XRP, but not nearly as much as I would have liked. But given what happens in euphoric bull runs, I have a suspicion that, perhaps we're not going to have to worry too much about that. There are so many analysts calling for double-digit price action for XRP, and although I don't know if those targets will get hit, I do not think they're crazy. Even for coins that have higher market caps, and so we have two examples above XRP in particular that are of note, which would be Bitcoin and Ethereum, they have been closer to where XRP is now and still gone on crazy runs that would be equivalent in terms of market cap. So that's why I say there's historic precedent for XRP having that type of action. It's not remotely unreasonable. Anyway, piece continues. Imagine XRP waited 8 years just to stop at $6. Raise your targets, Casey wrote on X. She suggested that such a modest price level would not reflect the scale of development surrounding the asset. Okay, well, I certainly agree with that. The fundamentals for XRP have never been stronger, but perhaps more importantly, since we are talking about a moment where euphoria is driving this, so it's less about fundamentals than it is in calmer environments. I will just say, given that XRP has been artificially suppressed for so many years, there's so much room for it to play catch up here. And that's also why I don't think it's crazy to speculate that at least perhaps XRP will come for that number 2 spot in market cap and maybe even supplant Ethereum, which has happened multiple times throughout history, just not since probably, I guess it would have been 2018. I think it happened multiple times, when they were there's that run between for that number 2 spot in the 2017-2018 bull run. I think it even happened one time. It might have been like around September, roughly. I'm pretty sure XRP also took out that number 2 spot then. So there was always that rivalry, gunning for that number 2 spot until the SEC came in and decided they were going to pick winners and losers here. Thankfully, that's over. But I think that it's just created an opportunity, though, for those multiple years now, for those who wanted to accumulate to actually do so. But I think that there's a reasonable chance XRP is just going to start behaving like it used to once you see more money flood the crypto space. That's when you have the opportunity for XRP to play catch up, but not in environments where there's too much fear in the market and not a whole bunch of money flowing in. But when we get back to euphoria and back to greed and ultimately extreme greed, that's when those types of things can happen. That's perfectly reasonable speculation there. Anyway, piece continues. The analysts joke that after years of volatility and patience from investors, a peak around $6 or even $6.50 would hardly justify the long wait many holders have endured. Yeah, and I think that'll, again, I'll say it again, I think a lot of people are going to feel that way. If we actually did peak that low, I think there would be a lot of people disappointed. And it still would technically be a success because, let's be real, XRP bottomed at 28 cents. But I'm with you guys, I think anyway. I'm assuming that most of you listening are in belief that you're going to see at least closer to double digits. I don't know. Again, I'm not making a prediction. I admit I don't know where the price is going. But I'm more in line with you guys and being, pretty optimistic that there's a pretty decent chance you're going to be seeing something more in line with that. And there's so many analysts that are even calling for $20 to $30 XRP, which also is not crazy. So just saying here, and take a look at this. There's this headline from Cointelegraph. XRP price chart mirrors 1,500% rally setup from 2017, but there's a catch. And so given that I knew I was going to cover this, that's part of the reason I wanted to highlight the similarities for that metric I showed you with Bitcoin in terms of Bitcoin on exchanges. Haven't seen this level since November 2017 for Bitcoin. And I'm just saying there's some very samey things going on here. Piece reads as follows. XRP's weekly price chart is starting to resemble a technical pattern that previously marked a major cycle low and preceded a sharp upside reversal. A long-term fractal comparison between 2017 to 2018 and 2024 through 2026 cycles suggests that XRP's sharp sell-off from $3.66 multi-year highs mirrors a pattern that formed a price bottom before a sharp reversal. On the weekly chart, XRP's drop to $1.10 resembles a retest of the lower trend line of a symmetrical triangle from 2017 when the price dropped to 12 cents, marking the local bottom. Commenting, crypto analyst Javon said, quote, "There is potential we see this overall run unfold in an identical manner. Doing so means that right now is only a temporary pullback before a move well above the $20 mark." End quote. So again, I do not know if that price will be hit this market cycle. That is not crazy. And there are similarities here. And it's true. History does tend to rhyme with itself, which is why I'm taking the time to highlight this. In 2017, XRP consolidated inside the triangle as leverage reset, eventually breaking above the triangle's upper trend line and rallying 1,577%. Indeed, you'll love to see it. And then there's also this. Since we were talking about how there's not a whole lot of Bitcoin on exchanges right now, there's also not a whole lot of XRP on exchanges right now. Take a look at this. XRP's multi-exchanges daily depositing / withdrawing transaction delta, a metric that tracks the net number of XRP transactions across 15 major crypto exchanges, has dropped to record lows according to data from CryptoQuant. When the metric declines, it suggests that more investors are withdrawing XRP into external wallets, CryptoQuant analyst said in a quick take analysis, adding, quote, "This behavior often reflects accumulation and long-term confidence," end quote. Well, folks, I literally highlighted this in a video yesterday, and it does matter. There are so many whales purchasing XRP. That is not my opinion. That is fact. That is absolute fact. It is provable fact. There are all sorts of metrics that point to this. And so that's what's going on. The retail speculators have just been panic selling. And at the same time, you see that there's this outflow from exchanges. That's silly ass name Moon Lambo on the Weber nets here. It's not just you and me. It's also the whales. It's the smart money, the people with financial backgrounds. It's not just crazy internet people. Traditional finance jumping in here, and for good reason. The fundamentals for XRP have never been stronger. XRP is an obvious early winner of the crypto space. I'm just highlighting that other people have figured this out. Most people on the planet have not figured this out. Most people have never heard of XRP, but they're going to. And this is good news for us, though, because if everybody already knew about it and agreed, there wouldn't be this opportunity for life-changing wealth, and it would just be. But the fact that you and I and all sorts of whales and the smart money see this first, that's an indication there is true opportunity here. Way less than 1% of humans have ever owned XRP at any point in history. Way less than 1%. And you already saw the price jump as high as $3.65, with almost nobody even knowing it exists, with almost nobody having ever purchased it. So what happens if we're right and XRP continues to get ridiculously adopted and utility only increases and more money does flow into crypto and XRP does capture a certain percentage of the crypto pie? Well, number go up is the answer. That's the point here, folks. That's why I keep saying the best is yet ahead. Even if there's more chaos in the short term, even if price goes down in the short term, it's possible. I don't know. We'll see. I don't make those calls. Even if that happens, it's just not going to frickin' matter. The evidence that XRP is a winner is on your screen. It has existed almost 14 years, and it has been in the top 10 coins by market cap for its entire freaking life. Every time we go into a bull run, XRP is going to be there. And it'll move around a little bit from position to position, but it's always going to be towards the top because that's what makes sense. The people have spoken. It's no longer just my opinion or your opinion. Speculators the world over for almost 14 years